Kirk Allen, George Reeves, Christopher Reeve, Dean Cain, Henry Cavill, others I'm going to blank on. What do all of these men have in common? Up, up, and away. Yes, if you are a good solid nerd, then your likely answer was those guys all played Superman. If you have been brainwashed by the communist cult of critical race theory and its pathology, then you probably said they're all white males. If you're a super nerd, you would have added something like, they all look like Superman. Since the days that the first ancient Greek players first took off their masks and began a new type of theater, people are cast based on what their physical characteristics are. Are they tall enough? Are they short enough? Are they skinny enough? Muscular enough? Are they fat enough? Does their voice sound right? Do they convey the proper presence? And this is true in every theatrical production, whether Shakespeare just wrote it and is casting people in this image that he had of the characters, but especially if you have an established character that you are depicting. We're living in a time where queens of England can be black for no reason at all. Kings of the Vikings can suddenly be black females. I just got the news today, surfing the net, that Carrie Kelley, my personal favorite of all the Robins in Batman, has gone from being a redheaded female to a black female, because being the only girl Robin was not sufficient. She was my favorite of the Robins. I'm not interested in watching any of the new shows anyway, so it's neither here nor there to me, except that this is the idiotic pathology. Even though Superman was a comic book character, he was established as a comic book and comic strip character. Even though he is fictional, they wanted people that looked like him to play him. Not only him, how did Linda Carter and Gal Gadot become Wonder Woman? They wanted someone that looked like Wonder Woman. We won't mention the ill-conceived But in an ordinary situation, you want your actor to look like the character. You want your act to convey. There's nothing wrong with that, and that's not prejudice. But the one that has been indoctrinated in critical race theory will say, well, the only reason Superman was created as a white male is because of the white male patriarchy, whatever. Of course, imposing their own made-up, imagined standards on a time long gone when this character was made. Of course, also completely ignoring the fact that the two Jewish guys that created Superman did it to be a critique against National Socialism. They were literally anti-Nazi. But of course, all of this is just one tiny fraction of all the ridiculous ideology. Now, a lot of my fellow nerds out there are fully aware, and thanks to the good work done by Geeks and Gamers and Nerdbotic, all these others, more and more people are increasingly aware of how foolish this is and that there are alternative ways to look at the universe. But here's the thing, it's not a recent phenomenon. This over-the-top woke nonsense may be relatively recent, but it's been going on for a long time. Now, DC Comics, now they're going to give us the Black Superman they already have in comic books. At least, they gave it a backstory. It's Val Zod. There's a whole alternate reality. We get some of it referenced in the TV series Krypton. I kind of gave that up after 2 seasons. I don't know if it still exists, actually. But even then, though they started a while back, suddenly they race swapped General Zod at the beginning of this and changed the Kryptonians just so they could get there. Now, to their credit, they put in the work to build a backstory that made some sense out of the situation, but nevertheless, they did it for the same reason that the woke people do it first thing this morning, swap out Robin's personhood for a different type of person for no apparent reason. This is going on with Catwoman. And I did a video this morning with Zoe Kravitz that she believes that she's oppressed by her race, this famous multimillionaire woman with $100 million, multi-hundreds of millions of dollar box office smash movie. And she's a victim being oppressed by people like me. But did they ever consider, just a thought, yeah, Eartha Kitt actually was Catwoman and she was black. And hey, I have nothing against Eartha Kitt whatsoever, but that was also woke. That was the era of blaxploitation. And they didn't let her be anything else. I mean, the character of Catwoman in the comic book, all the way back to when she still wore a full cat mask, she was a black cat. So Eartha Kitt couldn't be Robin, right? Eartha Kitt couldn't be a female Riddler. Eartha Kitt had to be Catwoman, who was already a black cat. Black Panther and the whole Wakanda phenomenon that took African Americans and black people worldwide by storm was a great thing. They were mad about allowing white models to model the shirts, for crying out loud. I've said in other videos, he was a blaxploitation character. Why? He was invented so they could have a token black character. He was never that significant. They revived him for the woke era to take advantage of that community yet again. And why was he a Black Panther? He had to be a jungle cat, apparently, and it had to be black. He couldn't be Wolverine. He had to be a Black Panther. He couldn't even be a lion. He had to be a Black Panther because it had to be something black. And you know, the woke crowd and its poisonous venom out there attacking everything and overlooking this ridiculousness, the silliness of you looking at everything through the eyes of race, which only you do if you believe in CRT. I never met any white people that thought that. Nobody looks at the world this way except those who have been taught to look at the world that way as an excuse for anything they don't like and anything they themselves have personally failed at. But because of this obsession, you've bullied people into peddling you things that you go ahead and buy. They invented the character of Black Panther just to appease that crowd at one time. They brought him back, repackaged him, and you paid a fortune for him and the merchandise to be used again by people that were just feeding your pathology. There was nothing particularly original about that character when they created him. He was created just to fill a tokenized slot. There's nothing new about him now. They bring him into the Avengers universe way too early at a time when he shouldn't have known the Avengers. They speed it all up. They bring him in, and hey, it wasn't a bad movie. And rest in peace, Chad Boseman did a fabulous job of playing him. But he was playing something really dorky. And yet everybody bought it. And Catwoman, who was a black cat, so she was the obvious reason, the obvious way to have Eartha Kitt be a character. It was a race swap then. It's a race swap now. So in the final analysis, Zoe Kravitz got the role as Catwoman because of her race, rather than the complaint that she was held back from it before because of her race. She literally got it this time because of her race. So she could, follow in the footsteps of the triumphant Catwoman, Halle Berry. I can't say that with a straight face. That horrible, horrible movie. So she could follow in the footsteps of Eartha Kitt, who was a talented, wonderful woman. She got the job because of her race, so she could go on TV and complain about how she can't get jobs because of her race. But they literally hired you to play a black cat because you're black and you've got to be the black character that's a black cat, and you could be Black Panther, who's a jungle cat, because all of that. And the opposite of what she expected, she got the role because of her race and is going to make a fortune, and she's going to make it off of the backs of people that are dumb enough to keep consuming this stuff that was idiotic when they conceived it. just playing and manipulating them. Blaxploitation is back in force and in power, baby. She's going to make even more of a fortune than she already inherited by being born into this universe as who she is, because she's playing this role. And yet she's going to whine and complain about injustice. I just got to stop thinking about this stuff. I give myself a head. And the weird, perverse irony that people like me are accused of being bigots and racists and whatever ism archaeobia you want to throw in there, because we look at how silly it is to suddenly swap a character. Build a real character. And you've got them. At least the Marvel universe certainly does. Though there's some in DC as well. Green Lantern. Marvel's had Monica Rambeau, and she was one of my favorite characters in the Avengers in the 80s. She became chairwoman of the Avengers. The actress they've got now seems like she does a good job playing her, but they keep writing her crap because they have to focus around the moral ambiguity of Wanda and the weird feminist message, and they've completely skipped over thus far. Like, you literally you brought into the films your great black female character who led the Avengers in the 80s, and yet you kept this one who had credibility and history shoved into the background so that you could emphasize these other characters that you just made up or modified beyond comprehension and shoved them out front for no reason. And I cannot fathom it. Carrie Kelley, hey, I was not going to watch any of this Gotham Knights garbage. I've not been watching any of this new nonsense whatsoever. My rule now is, after it's been reviewed, if enough people I trust say that it's worthwhile, I go ahead and watch it. But even that, I haven't watched some of them. I haven't watched the new Spider-Man No Way Home. I have not watched the new I'm not all that until it actually leads to a change in the industry back to some kind of sanity, when stories are made to make a good story instead of thrown at a screen hodgepodge to make sure you check all the boxes. I'm really not interested. So I don't really care. I'm not surprised what they did to Carrie Kelley. But again, the weird irony that they think that I have some sort of ism archaeobia for not loving the idea. And I actually was great with Carrie Kelley being the first female Robin. And I thought she was the best of all the Robins, in my opinion. But hey, keep throwing that garbage up on the screen and let it drip down and see who actually watches it, I guess.